Session 8 of Light and Discord. The Diamond Dogs, having finished their research at the Coastal Archives, now make their way back to the care of the coast, ready for an evening's revelry and drink, as they attempt to find out any information they can on the Lanfany ship that had sunk several days prior. Eros eventually spots an old acquaintance, an Astalian sailor and ship gunner by the name of Carlos. After several drinks, Carlos reveals that he does know some information on the Lanfany ship that sunk. I believe it was called the Snapdragon, he reveals to the group, and also thought it interesting that the ship exploded the way that it did, when such careful measures are taken to keep the black powder stable on board a vessel of that size. During the course of their meal and drinking, Cathod and Rek are racially profiled by their waitress, a teenage girl named Sabia, who eventually claims she's never seen a gray half-orc before and has only ever heard that they were barbaric and evil. After a conversation in which anger, on behalf of both Eros and Fenwick, and a soft demeanor and a desire to understand where she comes from on behalf of Cathod, an amicable resolution is solved, and Cathod conveys his admiration for Sabia's bravery in asking simple questions, rather than sticking to her own stereotypes. Mardigan, who had not returned with the group, had made his way to the market center and purposely made himself a target of pickpocketing in hopes of following the potential pickpocket. And indeed, Mardigan finds a mark. Unfortunately, the mark is quick, and through a little bit of luck, is able to escape Mardigan before he has a chance to close in. Mardigan, being somewhat impressed, and having other things on his mind, decides instead to make for the Temple of Fyron, where he believes, after his game of cards at the Slathered Slob back in Aviro, that the high priest of this temple, Marigold Turniptoes, actually is in league with the local Thieves Guild. Requesting an audience through use of Thieves' Cant with one of the priests of this temple chapter, Mardigan is once more turned away, though not for lack of trying. Eventually, he rejoins the group, back at the care of the coast, and when he does so, Cathod expresses his concern with the apparent corruption amidst the leadership of the local Church of the Principles. Both Eros and Mardigan agree that he, Cathod, shouldn't concern himself with it. They then head to bed, but Mardigan sneaks to the roof. The next day, the group decides to rest up until their tryout time arrives at the Crimson Colosseum that evening. And once there, they are taken to a lower-level chamber and interviewed by a halfling woman, one Céline Leduc. And through course of their interview conversation, she states that she knows that Mardigan is from Austauer, the capital city of the Almerian Empire, which she has never revealed. She reveals also that she knows at least something about all of them, and then commences the trial. The group, standing in the enclosed circular chamber, turn on their heels as two large doors fly open behind them, and two black bears come charging into the chamber. Mardigan bounds forward, unsheathing his rapier, and lands a near-fatal blow on one of the black bears, able to then dance around and get out of the reach of the black bear before it even has chance to return its biting or clawing attacks. Eros begins a subtle whisper, and the bear claws at its own face, horrid, dissonant whispers affecting its mind. And as it tries to retreat, Rek picks up his axe, which he has named Axe, and swings it with all of his might, slaying the bear as it attempts to retreat. It is then that Rek rages, and the candlelight in the room flickers, the very flame on the sconces growing dim, and the light seeming to gather at Rek's chest. Once enough is gathered, it fires a beam of light at the other bear, killing it also, and the entire party turns, jaws dropped, in Rek's direction. They then look and see equal surprise among the three interviewees sitting atop their small balcony, watching this combat end very quickly, and not so subtly. The halfling woman smiles. Well, it seems as though you ought to be welcomed into the Bronze League. Congratulations. And she turns and leaves the room. From here, the group returns to the care of the coast in almost dead silence, and once reaching their room, decide to unpack everything that has happened that evening, discussing Rek most heavily. Mardigan expressing his concern at the potential dangers of the apparent magic that lies within Rek. Fenwick informing Rek that he must study Rek's tattoos and try and find the deeper meaning behind all of this, finally has permission to identify the tattoos. And as the magic of his mind's eye presses in to identify what exactly has taken hold of Rek, he notes the strange, almost wild magic that stirs within Rek, uncontainable, unbound, and unyielding. Eros takes all of this in stride with great pleasure, and in his thrilled state is all too excited and ready to argue with Mardigan about the benefit of having such an individual amongst them. In desire of changing the subject, Fenwick turns to Mardigan and asks him if he would be willing to steal something for him. Kethod's ears perk up, having been deep in thought, but now very intrigued at the answer Mardigan will give him. Mardigan agrees, and Fenwick then describes the expensive bottle of bourbon sitting atop a shelf in one of the local shops. Could you grab that? Fenwick asks Mardigan. I suppose. After enough reconnaissance and the right tools for the job, sure. And Kethid reacts angrily, informing them, this is not how we should act, and Kali Doth deserves better. My hand would be forced, and I would have to inform her that someone has indeed stolen from her shop. Eros, noting the tension, jumps into the argument headlong, and eventually diffuses the argument, but not before telling Mardigan that he is all talk, and that he might as well go and steal something to prove that he's capable. At the very end of this conversation, both Mardigan and Rek get up and storm out of the room. Leaving the care of the coast entirely, they head in different directions, into the night, alone and without escort. Well, except for Rek, who Fenwick sends his own hawk familiar, named Eyes, to keep tabs on. Fenwick and Eros make their way down to the bar, and Kethid, somewhat disturbed by the recent events, decides to stay and pray to the moon goddess. Session 8. Wow. This was a lot of fun. I was incredibly excited once we actually got into combat now that our party has reached level 3, because this means that all of them have made their class selections for what kind of subclass they're going to be pursuing for the rest of the campaign, at least in the classes they have started with. And Rek has surprised the entire party. I don't think anyone in the party quite expected his rage to produce magic, let alone magic that pretty much Iron Man beamed a bear to death. You know, just little things, really. Nonetheless, it was a very fun session indeed. And at the end of it, most of the players had to end the actual session, well, let me rephrase, end the evening, not the session, reassuring each other that, hey, we're all good, but yeah, that was an intense conversation we had. As the party is leaving for the evening, well, mostly Mardigan and Rek leaving for the evening, tempers are high, and Mardigan's feelings are kind of hurt. Eros has said some things that I don't think he really regrets, but certainly he believes to be true. He hasn't seen Mardigan steal anything yet, other than, you know, a couple of things out of a tree hole, which was impressive to find, yes, but didn't require a whole lot of actual thieving. But regardless, our party has some interesting decisions ahead of them. Now having been confirmed in the Crimson Coliseum Bronze League competition, the group is apparently on the edge of fracturing. So we'll have to find out what it is that brings them back together or unifies them to get them back on track. And yes, I'm very aware that I was incredibly vague about Mardigan sneaking to the roof, and I will continue to be vague about this. Mardigan's player actually called me outside of session and said, hey, I want to do something. Awesome, let's do it. When my players contact me outside of session to either fill me in about what their characters are thinking, or what they experienced in the last session, or something they want to do in secret, I'm always game. One, it actually helps to speed up the rest of the sessions. We don't have to spend in-game time on something that is meant to be secretive anyway. And two, I believe it actually helps with not only the narrative, but also the role-playing at the table. My players who are watching this is the first time they've heard of that. And yes, I know, I'm keeping you in the dark. And don't go asking Mardigan what it is that he did. That will be revealed in-game at a later point, I'm sure of it. But for my players out there who really want to dive into their character and do some of the things one-on-one with the DM, I promise you're going to make not only the DM's day, but you're also going to help the party streamline some of the things in the upcoming session. Lastly, we have just encountered a brand new organization, the Crimson Collective. They're the ones who run the Crimson Coliseum. And apparently, they know more about our party than just about anybody else does. And that's concerning to some of our party members. To others, it's exciting. And we'll get more into that at a later point, I'm pretty sure. But the Crimson Collective is a very interesting faction indeed. So stay tuned. I'm sure you'll have more questions about this, and they will be answered in due time. For now, what are your thoughts? I certainly want to hear them in the comments down below. We'll read them, as that's what we do in a comment section. It's hard to hear comments, but read them on YouTube. Or if you know how to do that, that sounds cool too. Or perhaps you're dying to get more information about this world, or the campaign setting, or just ask questions about what we've done here that maybe would be too spoilery to reveal on YouTube itself. If that's the case, you should join our Discord. There'll be a link in the blah blah down below, and we would love to have you. We don't only discuss D&D, but so please know that if you're not really interested in the mechanics of the story, we can still have fun in other ways, I promise. From sharing memes and video links, to music, or just cheering each other up after having a bad day, or celebrating a good day. Ultimately, it's meant to be a place of community where you can just find a place to belong. And friend, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us for this session recap, Session 8. And Session 9 is a doozy. I'm gonna say it in the next episode, but I'll also say it here. If this were a primetime television show, we would have been trending after episode 9. So please stay tuned. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So once again, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and the little bell notification so that you are aware every time a new video is posted. In the meantime, I hope your Tuesday is fantastic, or whenever you're actually watching this video, and know that someone is in your corner, friend. You're a wonderful human being, and I'm really glad you're here. In the meantime, adventure's calling.